whatever you're doing right now.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Love Bay Afrobeats Music Talk Radio. My name's Miss J, here with my co-host. Say your name, lady.
Oh my goodness. It is Faith Greaves. I must be sleeping on this program this afternoon. I better
I'm
wake
telling
up, eh?
you, come on now. And we're
Oh
here
my gosh. Yes.
for our 5 p.m. community conversations. Each and every week we get together and we are talking about things that are happening locally and globally in our communities and how it impacts all African and Caribbean nations, including the ones where people are living and residing. And so we encourage you to be part of our communication. Sorry, I keep saying communication, our conversation, and
Yes.
make sure that you are importing. Now, today we're going to be talking on something that impacts everyone across the world, but of course, we are celebrating Truth and Reconciliation happening tomorrow on September 30th. But today, Faith is going to be leading us through an amazing discussion, and we have an amazing guest coming on as well, who's going to be helping us to understand the meaning of truth and reconciliation. So, Faith,
Mhm.
pass it over to
Oh,
you.
oh yes. It is such a wonderful opportunity when you can literally listen to another culture, another community, and make adjustment. So truth and reconciliation really impacts the Indigenous community across our global community of Canada. And this is where we saw the residential students, a time when they were, of course, they were taken advantage of, abused. There were so many documentation to prove how they were treated. There has been back and forth discussion with the government in regards to recognizing what has occurred with to these folks. And not only that, a white paper was finally done in reference to recognizing these individuals and seeing that the issues that impact these individual lives, it wasn't something that was made up. There was facts there. They were, of course, being victimized by the people in the community, leaders in the churches, in the school system that they attended. Their lives were not the same, and they were impacted tremendously. And we see where now our government finally recognized a day put aside for them, which it's great, but I'm not happy because it's only from a federal point of view, or federal where it's a few provinces that closed down, shut down business to recognize this group of Indigenous people that are the true residents of this land that we call Canada. So I just can't wait for us to really dive into it in regards to some of the things that happened to them and where they are today, because there's still issues, there's still healing process that need to occur, because you can't victimize a community of people and forget that they exist and they need to be healed. And healing is not something that happens overnight. It takes a time. It takes time. But ensuring that they have the right tool, the
Mhm.
proper support that they need, make a huge difference as to how they're going on this journey to heal.
Yeah.
And I take a moment here because tomorrow is the day where they're recognized, and they're recognized more so in my goodness, here in Toronto, Ontario, out in BC, and a few of the other provinces. It's not I shouldn't say, it's not a holiday for all provinces and municipal and provincial, right? It's a few areas that are closed. For example, the banks and all government institution is closed. Now,
Mhm.
in order for them to get their true recognition, we need to also be able to celebrate that with them. How do we do this? We have to celebrate with them by knowing that the holiday exists and being a part of what is going on. Tomorrow is Orange T-shirt Day as well, and that is for the injustice that was caused on these individuals. How many of us know about the orange T-shirt? Not very many. Do you know about the orange T-shirt?
I do. Actually, I wanted us to take a step back because I know we're going deep into the process of why this is important. But let's take a step back and maybe educate people who maybe are not too aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some information here straight from the sources of the Canadian Heritage website, and just so that if you can find it there on your own, you can go to Canadian-Heritage.ca and you can check out the information that you need to know. Each year, they say here, the day honors the children who never returned home and survivors of residential schools, as well as their families and communities. There's a public commemoration of the tragic and painful history of ongoing impacts that have been happening at the residential schools. And this is a vital component of the reconciliation process. And so the Orange Day, or the Orange T-shirt Day, as many know it as, is an Indigenous-led grassroots commemorative day intended to raise awareness of the individual and families that were impacted by the actions that were happening to them in these years. It's a symbol of stripping away of the culture and freedom that they and the self-esteem experienced by the Indigenous children over the generations. And so we encourage all Canadians to wear the orange T-shirt, to honor the thousands of people that were impacted, or the survivors of residential schools. And so if you haven't heard of it, that's what it is. There's a full commemoration happening. They have a week within the schools where they teach children what truth and reconciliation is and why we celebrate this day with
Mm-hmm.
pride. And of course, it's always, again, supporting our Indigenous communities.
Yes. And just to add to that as well, this all started in September 30th, 2021. So that
Yes.
was the first time it was observed for the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. And so it is critical for us to also understand there was 150,000 um, First Nation, Inuit, and Métis children from across the country. They were forced to attend Indian residential schools, which were often located far from their homes. Thousands never made it home, as you
Mhm.
stated. Can you imagine going to school, not coming back home? Your parents wondering, what has happened to my child? Where
Yeah.
is my baby? So, and a large adjustment has been done to this community. And no matter how we look at it, that could never be replaced by a dollar figure. But to give them
Mhm.
that peace of mind in reference to how we support them is what's critical. So the residential school created a great harm to that group of students. Think
Right.
about it: 150,000 students just missing your child, your baby. And
Yeah.
so this orange shirt really symbolized a lot because it also brings back a lot of pain to that group. And it's a constant reminder. It's not something, again, that is just buried away. You can't. So there is a lot of information, as you said, on truth and reconciliation. Reconciliation. My goodness, what a day I'm having here. And so it is
Yeah.
must
That's
be
because you
much.
had such a great evening at your award show that we're going to talk a little bit about
Oh
later.
my
I can't
goodness.
wait to hear the updates. We promised
Mhm.
that she
I
is here. So
Yes.
this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break to introduce our guests into our
Oh
show
yes,
today. And yes,
yes,
I'm super
yes,
excited that she's here.
yes.
Her name is Murrisa Bordeau, and
Mm-hmm.
she is a member of the Sophie Federation. And so I will
Mm-hmm.
welcome to the show, Marissa. I'm glad that let's just do a quick mic check. Are you with me?
I'm with you. Hi,
All right,
ladies.
say love, babe.
Thank you, Love Bay
Yeah, we
Radio.
can hear you.
Yeah.
You're connected. Wonderful. So
Yes.
Nice.
welcome, Marissa. We are so glad to have you here. I'm excited to hear, what you have to contribute to the knowledge base of our communities about the Indigenous Truth and Reconciliation Day. And so we'll pass over the mic to you and let you introduce yourself, and then let's jump into some meaty conversation.
Yeah, let's do that. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Love Bay. My name is Murrisa Bordeaux. My mother is where my Indigenous side comes from. And we're really happy to have a designated day, which is fairly new for our country, as you ladies know, to
Yes.
have truth and reconciliation, and to honor that and our history, and a lot of the land that we are on here is very indigenous, and a lot of it has to do with treaties, and I've been learning as I go as well, because as you know, we've lost our culture along the way, right? So it's
Yes.
important to go
Yeah.
backwards and to learn
Mhm.
and make sure that we know the history of the land that we're standing on.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, as you said, I am a member of the Sophie Federation. I'm working with UNESCO, um, bringing peace and truth and reconciliation in all four cardinal directions, as we are working shoulder to shoulder with every community and every color. And I'm just really happy to be here and to be doing the work that we're doing with National Policy Alliance and Alistair Coward. So I give thanks for that, and
Wow.
I give thanks for truth and reconciliation, that we all get to observe this together and learn together.
Love
That's
that.
beautiful. Yes, it's beautiful. So, as an individual, Marissa, how do you feel? How's your family embracing truth and reconciliation? Yes, it all started back in September 30th, 2021. What was the fight? What was the fight like to get that policy in place? How many years did the community, the Aboriginal community, had to really push the government for this?
So I think that the Indigenous community has probably been fighting for the entirety of Canada's existence, as we are the rightful stewards of this land for immemorable amounts of time, since before they even started counting time. So I think that to answer your question, the Indigenous have rightfully um, been seeking reconciliation the entirety of Canada's existence. Um, and so we first started coming across the unmarked graves, which was very not nice for
Yes.
anybody involved, for any Canadian and
Mhm.
anyone watching across the
Yes.
world. It was very devastating to find this. The number has jumped from 215, the initial finding of 215 children's unmarked graves, and we're now up into the tens of thousands.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
So we
You know,
will need space for those children, and those
yes.
families.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm just listening to you and just thinking about it. It's like we should just give a moment there of silence or so. Because as mothers, like, it doesn't matter who we are as mothers, fathers, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, a child's missing. That's hurtful. That's painful for a community. And as you said, you are the rightful stewardess to the land. But the tribulation that your community faced across Canada, and we're just talking about in Canada, has been atrocious. And we empathize, we we support you. We're here. It's not just September the 30th where we mark this day, but it's something that we continue, and we will walk with you. We're here for you, just to let you know. So this is not just because we're having a community conversation today. Let us know when you guys need us. Let us know when things are happening, so we are there with you.
Oh, thank you
We're
for
there
that.
with you. We're
Thank you.
there with you. You're welcome. I see too that you are a busy lady. I
I
see
would
too that
say
you,
yes,
yes.
very
You
much.
do, yes. Do you see Miss J? You see where she's at?
I, in a car, yeah. I love it.
Yes.
That's what she's on this grind, honey. This is what
Yes.
she's just supposed to be doing. Maybe you could share with us some of the things that you are on the grind doing. What are some of the things that are topping your agenda these days in terms of not just the holiday itself, but the what are some of the bigger and broader issues that you see that we should be aware of coming down the pipe that you want us to hear?
Yeah, no, I think thank you for asking. So with my work predominantly, we are shifting to get back to Mother Earth. And that is something that every person on Earth can relate with. And so that breaks barriers and boundaries and marginalized communities. Um, so we're getting back to Mother Earth, and that is what the Sophie Federation has programming for us out of Bermuda. And
Okay.
we're bringing solutions, energy solutions, food and water securities and guarantees as we move into our next year, which is a Jubilee year. So we're looking to move past our hurt and into the future where every person has food and water guarantees.
Yes, love that. Love that.
Yes, one
Love
of
that.
our SDC mandate, right? Ensuring that no one is left behind, no hunger in the world. We want to ensure that basic needs are being met. So that's a beautiful initiative that you guys are doing. That is fantastic. I was literally watching a program with a gentleman creating water out of I'm going to say precipitation, but he uses the plastic water bottles to generate the I guess generate the generators, or to mobilize the generators to produce water through precipitation. It's amazing. It's just amazing. And that is something that the earth need. We all need water. So it's a great initiative. And when we think about our country here, there's also a need. There's a need. We celebrate truth and reconciliation, but there's also issues within the Indigenous community right here in regards to homes and still education and where you're living and the water system here as well. Can you share a little bit of that with us as well?
Yes, the marginalized communities with
Mm-hmm.
some tainted water. And
Yes.
if you look at a map of Canada and large industry, you will see that Black and Indigenous communities and settlements are all along large industries. And this is causing a lot of unnecessary deaths and illnesses within our communities. And this is forefront and foremost with my mission.
Yes.
My colleagues and superiors often remind me that I have to worry about my own backyard as well as the rest of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's important that our own communities are secure and
Yes.
sustainable, community sustainability. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we're working on here. And so I'm actually bringing in a Canadian patented open source technology. So they're
Beautiful.
double wall
Wow.
insulated greenhouses that are filled
Yes.
with bubbles. So I've
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
actually
Yes.
taken the component of them, and we're now learning with bubbles. And we've taken it to the
Wow.
children level to start impacting families and changing the way that people are thinking about heat shields as we're experiencing global warming and climate
Yes.
change and crisis. So bubbles are actually a heat shield, and
Mm.
you can have your own experiment this way by filling the bathtub with hot water with bubbles on top, as opposed to a bathtub without bubbles on top. You'll notice that the heat escapes and the temperature of the water changes more
Yes.
rapidly than it would if there was a liquid level of bubbles on top of that water.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're doing is double wall insulated greenhouses that are closed ecological systems that are climate controlled inside, growing anywhere on Earth in any climate. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited and anxious to bring these solutions to communities all over, including in Africa. I'm sitting on the board of directors of some nonprofits over there. And
Wow.
to develop eco cities, villages, and communities, and move my children directly out of the slums as soon as possible.
Yeah, you mentioned something great there. I used to work with one of the largest organizations in Toronto, and I used to be able to sit with some of the elders. And one of the things that they impressed upon, our at our meetings was simply what you said, checking out, making sure your own backyard is in check
Mm-hmm.
before going out to help others. And one of the things that we connected on in community development was around the skill sets, and of the community, and helping those to get on par with the knowledge base of what's happening across, so they can have those impacts. To what you're saying, in terms of you're bringing, I mean, I'm just going to go try that in my bathtub later on with the bubbles. I mean, because I'm not scientific whatsoever, but now you have me interested. I want to go and test
Yes.
that. Sounds
We
amazing.
can do
'Cause
Yes.
experiments, and you can
yeah, those are little things that you would
Mm-hmm.
you can are drawing interest, right? That helps
Yes.
communities recognize
Yes.
just how simple little things have big impact, right? So that is
Absolutely.
something definitely. And if you're, and I love the fact that you're generating this for everyone who needs it,
One.
whether it's Black, Indigenous, whatever the case may be. And
Mm-hmm.
um that's super important, because at the end of the day, poverty impacts all sometimes,
Yes.
regardless of,
yeah,
yes,
poverty doesn't see any colors.
it doesn't
No.
see any colors. I'll tell you that much. If you could elaborate, taking it a little bit back around to the elaboration of the residential schools, maybe just as we opened, we talked a little bit about what truth and reconciliation was. We
Mm-hmm.
talked a little bit about the pain that was faced with finding all these unmarked graves. But for our listeners, can you just talk a little bit more about the residential schools component, so that people can understand how all of this is connecting to the conversation we're having now?
Of course. So residential schools operated for many years at
Mm-hmm.
the turn of our century here in Canada, and they were more recently abolished, actually, in I believe in the early '90s. So
Hmm.
thankfully,
Yes.
I did not have to participate, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thankful that my mother also and our family did not. We don't have any missing children from our family. Thankfully, I give thanks for that every day. Um, But what would happen is the authorities, namely, usually, typically, the RCMP, the OPP, the police, they would remove children from Indigenous families and bring them to residential schools that were managed typically by the Catholic Church and the Canadian government, the federal Canadian government,
Mm-hmm.
where we weren't allowed to keep our hair long. I know you can't see right now, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have very long hair, and I'm grateful to be able to have that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if times were different, I wouldn't be able to be left-handed like I am. Singing, dancing, culturally, these things were all not allowed. We were not
Yes.
Hmm.
allowed to speak our Indigenous languages, our traditional dances, our traditional healing. Basically, any culture that was left in our people was taken from our people.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Being
And some
stripped.
children never made it home, right? As we see with
Yes.
these graves. So
Yes. And I
Yeah.
can just imagine too, when a child not wanting to give up their values, the things that they were taught. Mom taught me our culture, how to do certain things, and all of a sudden it's taken away from you. It's taken away from you.
Hmm.
yeah,
That's painful.
everything
That's
that you knew is now gone, including your hair, your ability. You might not even know how to speak English,
yes.
but now you're
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
English school and you're going to sit in this desk and your hair is chopped off and you will not
Yeah.
Hmm.
speak to your parents. Uh,
No,
It's
taken
still, it was
away.
like a rewiring effect. There was a documentary I was watching, and it was about it was about a family, one of the last families on in the land in that territory, and they showed a man going there and trying to tell the father that he has to send his kids to school, and he has to,
Hmm.
and the father said no, they're fine, they're learning all the things that they need to know to survive, they're learning what they, our culture is
Hmm.
important. And it was him just following. He said, he followed him around just to see what this culture was about. You would think that would be the first thing he would do first before he just demanded them to pack up and send his kids somewhere. But it
Hmm.
was interesting by the end of it, where he said, well, you know what, I see that they're enriched, they're loving, they're kind, they're growing up well, but
Mhm.
this government just wanted them to come to this particular school. There was supposed to be a part two coming out in terms of what that outcome was, but the powerful thing I found about it was that the simplicity of the argument was, why are you demanding them to learn a specific way when they're
Yeah.
here? They could read, they could do everything. They were well knowledge, well informed, and it just goes to show how easily, you know, things like this happen, where, you know, culture comes and tries to dominate another culture by saying, no, this is the way it's done. And
Mhm.
this is what we're reconciling now. For those listening, this is what we're fixing. This ability to come in and try to wipe out a whole nation, or try to turn it into what fits, you know, society. So
Yes.
whether you're coming from the indigenous, or you're coming from, you know, the black, or wherever, whatever we're representing, everything leads down to the fight that the indigenous is leading, I say, in a way, in the
Mhm.
modern day, because we can talk about the history of slavery for black people and whatnot, that goes back and there, but I think there's a different approach the indigenous bring to this, because they bring just back some of the knowledge, but better, or sorry, furthermore, you're recognizing the need to embrace what's happening today and move forward. As you said, next year is your Jubilee year, and you're
Yes.
looking to get into the healing. No more of the pain. We've discussed the pain, we've made our stance. Now we're going to take our community forward. And that I love. That I hail you on all, because it's something that not many uh, repressed or oppressed people tend to do,
Mhm.
sit in it, and, you
Yeah.
know, rehashing it. And for you all, it's not ending. Like, you're just finding more and more and more, but yet
Yeah.
here you are saying, in the face of pain, we will heal, and we will be stronger than ever. So spot on for that. I have had lots of amazing engagement with the indigenous community. Like, I have my dream catchers, and you know, the kids I used to work with in my day to day. Amazing. They just look at the world differently. So simple and so profound.
Mhm.
Elders
Yes.
just continue to pass those pieces, and you know, so it's a great thing, Marissa, what you're doing, what you're representing, who you're representing, and we can only learn
Yes.
from those who are here way before, like you said, time was counted. Uh,
Before we even
Mhm.
started ticking.
right?
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Amazing Race has put that up a lot too. They've shown a lot of the indigenous, Amazing Race Canada. They've shown a lot of those indigenous components, and parts of what
Mhm.
you're saying. You're seeing that now, because they're not just showing them, you know, in their village. Now they're showing the advancements of what the communities are doing, and I think that's amazing, because the best thing you can do for anything is role model what you
Yeah.
want to see, and that's
It's
what
Yes.
time for leaders to rise, right?
that's it.
Yes.
100%. And we're sitting with one right here. If you're now logging in, let's just give you a quick recap. We're sitting here with Murrisa Bordeau, and she is part of the Sophie Federation, a member of the Sophie Federation, and she's educating us today on truly what truth and reconciliation is, and how the Indigenous nation is taking the next step, moving into their future and bringing the knowledge, skills, and capacity into their culture as learning, and not just sharing with us before time, but also sharing,
Mhm.
recognizing such an important day. If you haven't caught this full interview, please take a moment, go back and hit the replay of the show and listen to what she is saying. We can all take a page from her book when it comes to progression. They're not stopping. I'm there with them. They're helping the BIPOC community as well. And
Mhm.
anything that they need, if it's within Love's Bay power, I can't put, I can't say they're going to give you $1 million, but maybe.
No, but you've given us a voice here,
This
so
is the yeah,
Right.
the platform we want to give you is this voice, and we want to thank Love Bay for opening up these opportunities. So if you haven't been tuning in from the beginning, the replay will be there. Please take it and support your indigenous communities. There's one thing to talk
Yes.
and listen and say, "Oh, this is great," but as Marissa said, you got to look into your heart first and see, really get yourself in check, and then pass it forward. Is there anything else that you would love to share with us, that you want us to continue championing for you as we go through these shows?
No, I give thanks to Love for holding this space today, and for you lovely ladies hosting me and this very important message as we lead the to the rise to the call here, and we're actually shifting the paradigm into the divine feminine. So
All
I give
right. Tell us more about that, girl. Let's go. I just extended the invitation just a little longer. Let's
that's what
talk
this
about
is.
it. Yes,
We
Yes,
let's
are
tell us a little
shifting
bit
to the
about
divine
that.
feminine, and we're
Yeah.
full of
I like
female
that.
leaders across the world.
Yes.
And we give thanks to that. It goes all the way back to Ethiopia into our nation with the
Mm,
Wow.
1904 treaty with the USA. So we're all about the trust, the treaties, the policies, and that is the way to the future. The 13th
Yes.
dimension and the 13th Amendment. I hope that everyone takes the time out of their day to look up that and do some research there,
The
because
mhm.
Jubilee
13.
is coming.
Yes.
Yes.
Writing that
Yes.
down right now. The
You
13th
you
dimension, is that what you
30
just said?
amendment.
The
Yep.
13th
30
Amendment?
amendment.
Amendment and the 13th
Hmm.
dimension. The 13th Amendment was a signed treaty with Ethiopia in 1904.
Hmm.
And some of my colleagues are from Ethiopia and Harar Nation. And we've got UNESCO at the table. So this is a movement. This is something like a Marcus Garvey, like a Martin
Oh
Mm,
my
Luther King
goodness.
of my
Wow.
time. This is a movement. This is post Black
Yeah.
Lives Matter. This
mhm.
is peace in all four cardinal directions.
So
Beautiful.
that's a whole
I
nother show
love,
that you're
yes.
going to come back and talk to us on, right, Marissa?
Yes, yes.
That's
I
I
all.
also do have
love,
my own podcast as well called Living in Truth,
Okay,
living
in
again.
partnership with
living in
KGL
truth.
TV. So
Okay.
I would love to host you guys on there as well in the future.
Oh,
Beautiful. I
sure.
love the
Listen,
fact that you are such an international woman. No matter what
yes.
you are going through, truth and reconciliation, you don't let it hold you back. You are just pumping away. And I'm just listening to the great leaders that you've spoken about, just the movement with the Ethiopians and the 13 amendments. It is beautiful. And I love the conversation. I love the conversation. And we love the conversation when we can get folks like yourself come out on Love Bay Radio, Afrobeat, and just share your insight, your knowledge, the pain, and you're so relaxed in sharing
Very
that.
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you
she's
so
focused.
much. Yes,
She's focused.
yes,
There's
very.
nothing stopping her, and I love that. Like
No, I love it.
you're not
Love
coming off
it.
of here to go and sit down. You're getting off here
No,
and you're just turning on the engine and keep going to the next. And we want to thank you for the time because we know you're extremely busy. So for you to take the time to come and sit with Faith and I to really talk about topics that are impacting our communities is beyond. We're blessed and honored to have you in our presence, and we wish you the best as you move forward. And we're here as your platform when you need to continue,
absolutely,
reinforcing the mission. We're here to support you on that, and we want
absolutely.
to thank you for coming out.
Thank you
Thank
both so much.
you. Yes, you're
All
welcome.
And
right,
Keep us
have a good one.
posted. Keep us posted.
yeah, I look
Take
forward.
care.
I will come back and give a report on our progress that we make there.
Yes, you will. Yeah,
Yes.
and if you ever need me to fly to Africa with you to be on the board of something, I'm totally open for that.
Oh, we're getting Kenyan passports, and we're gonna go
Well,
build a new city.
girl,
So
let me
let's
get my
go.
pen ready.
Beautiful. Yes.
No, I
That's
love it.
a
Lead
that's
the
another
language.
conversation.
That's
Yes.
what I'm saying. Like,
Yes.
Marissa, we're gonna have to put
Yes.
some like components, just have you back every
Yes.
few weeks just to keep up
That's it.
with all
Oh
that's
Yes.
yeah,
happening. That's right. And why
Yes.
not get it live and direct? You know what I mean? Instead of sitting and listening to the internet. I could get it, we could get it right here. So if you, ladies and gentlemen, it's right here. You know why
Yes.
we have community conversations because we talked about
Talk.
local and
Yes.
global impact, and you get to sit down and listen directly and speak to. If you have questions for Marissa, on things that she has said, things that are coming up. Maybe you're connected in some way.
Mhm.
Please email us here at infolovebay@gmail.com and we will get those questions to her and get those answers and report back. We'll be her extended voice when she's too busy to be with us. We'll be your extended voice and we will get all the answers you need to continue supporting such a great movement. Thanks, Murrisa. Be
Thank
safe.
you, ladies. Have a blessed
Thank
night.
Take
you. You
care. We'll
too.
talk to you
Safe
soon.
travel. Thank you. Wow.
That was amazing. Man, it's
That
so great when
was
you get to, rub shoulders. I have to give
yes.
it to the founders of Love Bay. They don't do anything small. They just keep bringing it in. I love it.
And
So for
I
those who are just tuning in, I'll just give a quick recap, and then Faith, I'll have you tie us off on this topic. For those coming in, please hit the replay. You just saw Murrisa Bordeau, a member of the Sophie Federation. As you can see, she's working on a lot of amazing things. We are celebrating Truth and Reconciliation as of September 30th, a day where we are talking about residential schools, our people are for the children who they are continuously finding unmarked graves. And we are looking at how the government is making sure they rectify this situation. Just a quick note, if you are supporting any of the Indigenous communities, the Residential Schools Missing Children Community Fund is effective once again as of August 16, 2024. Members of Minister Anand Dasangari has put out a statement that they are bringing the funding framework back. And this is in direct response to the concerns and feedback received from the Indigenous leaders and the communities. So please, if you want to, just go and search up Residential Schools for Missing Children Community Support Fund. They're taking their deadlines are there, how to apply, how to contact, what they're covering. As again, this is an urgent priority that's going to remain top of mind in the industry, in the government of Canada. And as you know, in 2015, they released its final report and the 94 calls to action detailing the far-reaching effect or impacts of the residential school system. So yes, we may not hear it on the news every day, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's still there, and they're trying very hard to reconcile.
yes. It's a touchy topic. Although one, yes, there's celebration around it. There's still areas that need to be cleaned up. Um, and wherever we can support as a people, as a community, it's important because no one can do it by themselves. They need support. And we don't really get the information unless we are tuned in, listening to one of the top station out there, Love Beat Afro
Beat
Radio.
Music Talk
Music, music
Radio.
talk radio. How many lands are we in? My gosh, over a hundred
Yes.
lands we're in. So we are global. We're a global platform. And so the information that we bring to you, research is done on them. So you're getting truth, facts. And we want you to be in tune, listening weekly with us at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make it a date.
Make it
Sunday
a date.
special. Make it a date.
That's
Make it a
it. Come
date.
and check
Yes,
us
make it
out.
a date. Make
Yes,
it a
and most
date.
importantly, bring the questions, share your knowledge, share your expertise, share your wisdom. As you can see,
Mhm.
we had on Murrisa Bordeaux, and she really broke down what's going on the ground. And there's so much different issues that are happening that yes, we can read about it, but if you have that information and you love a platform to share and to dig deeper into how these things are impacting your community, we encourage you to come. We encourage you to connect with us and just get on here and start talking about those things. And it doesn't always have to be, it could be good, it could be bad, or it could be ugly. Community conversations covers it all, right? We talk about what's hot and what's not. So you just simply have to tune in right here on the online version and be part of the conversation.
Yes. Be
Okay,
part.
so we are excited about tomorrow. If you haven't got your orange shirt, please try to get that. If you're looking again to support movements that you're doing in terms of the Indigenous, check out some of the resources that the government's putting out there. I mean, there's $21.8 million going into funding to help these Indigenous initiatives to power up based on this residential school missing children community fund. So there is funds. So if you're doing something, support. If there's a small community in your area, support, support, support. And sometimes support could be just letting them know there's funds out there for them to access. All right, we're going to be moving on to our next topic, talking about the Black community, where we are getting a lot of shootings within our communities.
Yes,
You can see that this has become a
yes.
turbulent problem. We can go back years. I mean, the Toronto District School Board years ago represented the fact that the Black dropout rate in school system was
Hmm.
40%. I sat on the board, the parent the parent regional board for TDSB for a number of years, within my position with the city, but also as a parent. And a lot of the things that we discussed there was, why are these things happening, and
Hmm.
how can we help to support them? So, do you want to weigh in, Faith, with any of your experiences that of anything recent? I know we were talking, and you said there were some recent things that were happening that were having
Yes,
direct impact on families that you know.
yes. Well, a couple of the folks that volunteer with me, one sister in particular, the young men who got shot a couple weeks back in the Driftwood community, was a Jamaican young boy and a Somalian young boy, and they were friends. They were friends, and it seemed as if there was either some misunderstanding, and one shot the other, and the other. There was three of them actually were together, and it's really sad in reference to how friendship can turn into something sour based on could be an argument over something minute. And life is so important, and you can only just imagine how the parents are taking it, how they're dealing with this atrocity. You know, there has to be something, there has to be something that needs to be done. Like, as a community, as a people, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Because it's not a today situation, it's a situation that has been plaguing the community for a while. And
Yes,
I
as
feel that the responsibility lies in our hands to really say, hey, we want to clean up. We want to do something. We want to start talking to our youth. We want to start talking to them more so to find out what's going on. What are they thinking? What's in their mind? What is it that they need to support them? They have so much freedom. They literally do. And the saying, freedom can also destroy you. Too much freedom.
yes,
And I'm not
you
saying to put them in prison and take away their rights. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we need to make sure that they are okay, because there is a lot of different issues, situation that is plaguing them, that is bothering them. Their association, as parents, as friends, do we know who our children are connecting with? As
hmm
parents,
yeah,
our mothers need help.
yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a great um, piece by Tanya Lorraine Sharp, who's the founder and director of the Center for Research and Innovation for Black Survivors of Homicide Victims. And there's some really good facts here that I thought would be really relevant to what you're saying. They're saying that these things are happening predominantly in Black neighborhoods where they're
Hmm.
underserved in terms of support, as you were just saying. There's a report that came out around the homicide tracker where it looked at killings from 2004 to 2020. Sorry, 2020. How do you say that? 2020? No, 2020. Let's just go.
2020. 2020.
Let's just go with that. Let's just go with that, right? 2020.
2020, yes.
By neighborhood, as well as support services afforded to the family and friends who were affected. It shows here, and I quote, Toronto neighborhoods with lower socioeconomic status, higher populations of young Black residents, and housing instability. Those
Mhm.
social determinants of homicide have experienced a steady increase in homicide over the past 10 years. Tanya Lorraine continues to say that compared to downtown neighborhoods, Black survivors in the Northwest neighborhoods have less access to grief and bereavement services. This research is now
Mm.
coming to heel in the 2022 in Toronto, where they had 6 homicides in just a span of 2 weeks. And they're affirming that many of these community advocates have been saying over the years there's not enough support, there's
Yeah.
not enough resources for these families. And working in the community for over 30 years, I can agree wholeheartedly that the pop-ups seem to happen in our communities. A shooting happens, let's
Mhm.
put on more youth workers, let's put on more this, let's do that. But then once that kind of fades, so does the supports,
Yeah.
right? We were just talking to an organization who was providing funding from Alberta, and she said something very profound, that it's time to change the narrative on how we're getting this funding. Right now, you're getting year to year funding versus
Hmm.
funding. And so I
Exactly.
definitely, really took that to heart because it's true. I did a little bit of research and I'm noticing that yes, other things are getting multi-year funding, but those other pieces are either getting a big piece of the pie, but little chunks at a time. And
Mhm.
that can definitely change the narrative and how we can provide ongoing support for these
Yes.
communities.
And the thing is too with the organization that are getting funding, capacity building isn't there. So when that funds run out, what happens? What
Well,
happens? They're
yeah,
struggling. There's no
need preserve.
resources to help. And I think one of the things that the government also need to look at is when you stigmatize a community, you label a community, what are you going to produce in that community? When you think
Yes.
about it, if we're talking about low income families, when you're telling the world or the communities that this area is only for a set group of people, what are you doing to those people? You're not
Yes.
giving them any hope. You are basically disempowering them. And then the
Hmm.
youth now, there is nothing there for them to do. And then the schools that they're in. We got to look at also their association, the teachers. What are we doing differently? I remember when I was going to school, I loved school. My teachers were great. They were interested in me. They took me aside. They did extra work with me. And so we want to look at the whole picture.
Yes.
We want to
Yeah.
look at the whole picture, how to
Yeah.
change the paradigm as to what is going on in those communities. We want to get parents more involved because
Hmm.
it's not just a drop off center. It's a center or place for them to be educated, but you also need to tap in to make sure that your child is okay in the school system, in the people, the young people that they're associating with. Sometimes it's great to know who their friends are,
Hmm.
what they're doing, their extracurriculum activities. What does
Hmm.
that entail? What does that activity entails? Who is visiting them that you are not aware of? There are so many things that are out there that we literally have to pay more than the usual attention to because the world is shifting. The communities are shifting. The people that are coming into the communities, you don't know who they are. But we need to really think about what changes we want to see happening in those communities to have successful black boys, black girls, Hispanic children, whomever they are, to be a success story. Lives are important. Their little lives are important. When you think about the population of youth violence, guns today, it's out of control. It's out
Hmm.
of control. So we have to take it back. We have to want to take back that community. We have to encourage. We have to basically preach it out there. How can we help? Parents, how can we
Yeah.
help?
Yeah.
You know, Love Bay is a wonderful place to have conversation, community conversation. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to know
Mhm.
what can be done differently. How can we make that change, that shift, and have our kids' lives restored in a place where they feel safe, they can do what they need to do. I remember as a kid, playing little games outside was fun. You rarely see children playing games outside today.
Hmm. Well, that's because the
So,
digital world is
yes.
just as prevalent, but it's exposing to that point. It does expose kids to high extremes amounts of violence. I know that some of
Mhm.
the games my kids are playing were extremely violent, and you didn't even think about it as they're
Yeah.
now because they can download it. You don't even need to buy it in the store where you kind of had a little bit more control. Now they could just go onto the store, punch in your credit card, and they're downloading. They're just downloading these games, and a lot of these games do push the narrative of violence. It
Yeah.
doesn't push the narrative of social interaction or
No.
conflict resolution or how to deal, manage or control one's emotional intelligence. It's, yeah, you talk to me wrong, pop you. That it's
And
pretty much that simple. And they don't
done.
know the impact. Right now, the data is showing that um, 75% of Canadian homicide victims are racialized Ontarians, and
Mhm.
44% identified as African, Caribbean, or Black. Worst off, if you don't count those numbers, it suggested that each homicide that happened leaves between 7 and 10 family members or close friends struggling. And so you said something that was really key. Parents, you need to know what's going on in your child's life. Sometimes we look at the youth and we tend to give it them the blame. Like, oh, they're out there shooting each other and they're out there doing this and they're out doing that. But I always say, take yourself back to when you were 14, 15, or 16. What were you doing? And what was your parents' involvement? And you can usually start to see the cycle of that, right? For people who were never really had that parental involvement, my parents knew where I was. You know this. My parents where I was every
Yeah.
second of the day. All right. If it meant my mom was watching us in the window while we trapped off to
Yes.
school, we couldn't go
Oh
left or
yeah.
right. Couldn't go
No,
left or
no,
right. They looked
no.
at us. If I'll
That's
never
it.
forget my father, we snuck off to the corner store thinking we were like,
Oh
yeah,
my
we're just
goodness.
gonna take a quick dip. We turned around and my dad was standing in the corner store door, the door of the corner store, looking at us like, and who gave you permission to go there? Right.
Yes.
And it was like we had that level of support. And a lot of the times we're blaming the youth for things that they just don't
Don't
know. At that
know.
age, their brains are not fully formed, but parents, they are, right?
Yeah.
So parents have to not only just recognize where their children are, but take an active interest in learning what's going on today, right?
Yes.
Not only just sending your kids to school, but connecting with the teacher. If you're having issues or concerns, connect with your local community center and find programs that are there so that you can structure your child's involvement and engagement to help them to ramp up their cognitive skills and their emotional intelligence, their how to handle conflict, and just get them interested. Because a lot of times when I speak to youth, a lot of them aren't in gangs or just running the streets. They're there
Hmm.
because they don't have that home where they
Yes.
go to their parents and say, "How was your day? What did you do today?"
Absolutely.
Right? But
Yes.
they find that comfort in the streets because someone
Yes.
cares. And that, something that I've seen in my 30 years working in the youth sector is that they find someone who cares. And so our community centers became full of those youth. We became their aunts, their uncles, their brothers, their cousins because
Hmm.
we cared enough to know what was going on. And like I said, it's not blanket for everybody, right? There are parents who raise set the best for their children at home, but they just fall into bad association. One thing leads to the other. But it's that awareness piece that you just want to be aware that if they're not talking to you, they're talking to somebody.
Yes, that's it. They're not talking to you. You said it. They're talking to someone else, or someone else is talking to them because they see something missing from your child, and
Yes.
they offer them that support. And they're
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
vulnerable,
Yeah.
vulnerable. And so, with that, we have to do our part as
Yeah.
parents. I
Yeah.
remember too, I'm sure you can, when your parents were going out, you were going out with them too.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
can
yeah.
I? I
We were
mean,
going out with our parents. If they're going to a house party or whatever it is, a birthday party of some sort, we are
yes,
going as children, and the parents are upstairs having a good time, and we as the kids are having a good time downstairs.
that's
Today
it.
it's changed. Kids are
Yes.
going wherever they're going, parents are going wherever they're going. There's no communication as to where you're going.
Yeah.
And
And who are
so
you? Yeah.
there's so much. And
And
there's
who are
one
you?
thing I wanted to get back to when you mentioned the games, the digital games. You see that word game. The game is teaching you how to use a gun, how to kill somebody, but it's a game.
Yeah.
You
A
see the
100%.
misconception. And
Yeah.
so when you and someone have a little disagreement, the violence or the mindset shift, because this is what's the game you're playing, but it's teaching you. It's teaching you how to how to react in a negative way.
Well, that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
in a negative way. Because when you think about the shooting, they're
Yeah.
senseless killing of each other and so forth. So we have work to do in our community, and we cannot do it by ourselves, and we need each other. And mothers need the support, dads need the support, parents need the support on a whole, teachers need the support, the community needs a support. So let us hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and your comments as well, because this conversation is not just between Miss J and myself. It's between us as a community talking. How are we going to find resolution to all of these issues if we're not having a community conversation with you, the listeners? We want
That's it.
your active involvement. Back
Yeah.
to you, Miss J.
Yes, because at the end of the day, the social determinant factors are there. Things such as employment, income, education, these all impact. You know that there's the laws now, the anti-Black racism factors that are coming in. You know, the mayor had put in this action years ago in terms of how can we create, destroy these structural inequities. For example, they say Black Torontonians are 4 times more likely to be charged with a crime, and 1 in 5 young Black men in Ontario have been incarcerated compared to 1 in 70 white men. So these are things that are having a ripple effect. And I know that there's a lot of organizations that are out there fighting it. We have Reverend Sky Star, I believe, I think lived in uh, I think it was in Toronto since 2006. She's a therapist and community activist in the Jane and Finch neighborhood, and she authored a book on the ripple effects of gun violence. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. She's been a long-standing advocate for the resources for survivors of gun violence. And we talk about those who have passed, but we don't talk enough about those who have survived it and how much is pain. And when you're looking at youth, for instance, as she said, that you've gone through a trauma and continue to be re-traumatized, because we think about it, if this is happening every few weeks in a community, as parents, we are concerned about sending our kids out into these communities now. We're concerned about them being at school, but what about the child? Are we really helping and talking to our children about the gun violence and the impacts it's having? It's one thing to say, oh, these kids are idiots and they're just out there shooting up the place, right? But we want to give them a different perspective. And sometimes if they can see, like you said, the game is the game, right?
Yes.
That CPU gets up and comes back again to be
Mm-hmm.
shot in the next segment, right?
That's it.
However, that is not the same. And I think a lot of youth need to understand, or parents need to help their youth understand, and finding the right people to talk to them if they're
Absolutely.
struggling with the topic themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Star continues to say she's been trying to draw attention to the lack of support of gun violence victims with the city, with provincial and government, even federal officials for years. And so talk,
Yes.
people, get into your community, get to your MPs, get to your city councilors, get to your mayors, send in that information, and not only ask but demand the support.
Yes.
Because once we start to look at these anti-Black racism factors, we're going to see that there's a bigger need than just saying stop the violence. There's a
Yes.
bigger piece that speaks to, if parents had money, they could probably you would probably be able to give your children a better life. And so sometimes it doesn't start in the streets, it starts in the home and it bleeds out into the streets, right? And if we're too far removed as a community from these issues and we say, well, that's not my kid, my kid's okay, then remind yourself that your children still have to attend school with these situations that are happening in our Black communities. And if we're not getting the resources and getting the equal opportunities, it's only putting your own child as well as the rest of the community at a disservice.
Yes. And also, just to let folks know, communities that are experiencing these situation, gun violence, losing members, there is fundings from the city. Municipal government do have fundings there for you to plan activities.
Yes.
So there, we got to basically understand there is some fundings there. You can basically have a discussion with other mothers in the community, or just have the community together. How can we make some changes that will better our community through this ordeal? So there are some fundings there. You
Oh, I think she froze. So I'll just help and jump in here. So if you're just joining us here at Love Bay Afrobeats Music Talk Radio, you're sitting with Miss J, your host, and I co-host Faith Greaves. And today we had a powerful discussion on two key topics that are impacting communities. One being truth and reconciliation happening on September 30th regarding the residential schools and how they're making changes in order to get back on track. As Murrisa said, we had Murrisa Bordeau here, a member of the Sophie Federation, who shared with us amazing things in terms of what the Indigenous communities are doing, where they're going, and how the impact of this recognition is helping them to move forward into the healing phase. We closed off with the increasingly amount of shootings happening in our Black communities. As we were reading out some of the data and some of the facts, these are real. They're hitting home and they're hitting close to home, and they might be directly impacting you. So how can you help? You can help by ensuring that your children are being educated on the impacts of gun violence, making sure you're listening to them, being involved in their world, helping them to understand who they are and what they're capable of doing, and taking it more to the positive effect. As you know, we are here every Sunday at 5 p.m. right here on the Love Bay Afrobeats Music Talk Radio in called Community Conversations. We talk about what's hot, what's not, what's going on in our local and global community. We invite you to look back at this show and to take some real stock in what's being said. If you have things you want to share with us that are pertaining to this topic, we ask you to definitely reach out and connect. Why? Because you are our community and we want to have those conversations for you. So we're here at the top of the hour. Thank you for coming to visit us here right Bay on Love Bay. I'm Miss J and my co-host Faith, who's pretty much frozen somewhere in Friesland, but I send on behalf of her our thank you for being here, and we look forward to talking to you next week right here on Love Bay Afrobeats Music Talk Radio. On that note, have an amazing day and keep on dancing. Take care.